educational consultant at Kent ISD, and I focus on English language arts and social studies.
I'm Mary Ann French. I'm a retired middle school social studies teacher, and now I work for the Michigan Department of Education, and I put your social studies MSTEP test together.
My name is Colin Sullivan. I teach AP Government and Government at Hudsonville High School, and for about 20 years I also taught the People team, and I was on your guys' side, so it's always interesting to be on this side as well, but I know how much work you put into it, and you guys are going to do awesome today, so we're looking forward to just having a conversation with you about this subject, so great job.
I'm Barbara. I'm your facilitator, so make sure you can see me if I'm holding up these signs, and nice to see you guys.
All right, great. Well, we're excited. We're going to go ahead and get started in Unit 1, correct?
Yes.
Can we have them introduce themselves?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Ariola.
I'm Evan DePue.
I'm Victoria Valdivia.
And I'm Allison Sherman.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, so we'll get started. How have both classical Republicans and natural rights philosophers influenced the founding of the American political system? Considering how did both ideas influence various founders' views about government? What are the essential differences between classical Republicanism and natural rights philosophy, and might there be any similarities? And then why do both classical Republicans and natural rights philosophers stress the need for education in preparation for citizenship? Maybe you can do that.
The modern political system of the United States was primarily influenced by the philosophies of classical republicanism and natural rights. Both the collaboration and the clash of these two fundamental ideals resulted in the establishment of the Constitution and the further establishment of the two-party system, along with modern debates such as socialism versus capitalism. Understanding these two philosophies is key to understanding the development and current standing of the United States. Under classical republicanism, the government and its people would work to promote the good of the community. Under natural rights, the government would refrain from restricting the God-given rights that were owed to the citizens.
Classical republicanism was a political philosophy developed in ancient Greece and Rome, with figures like Aristotle and Cicero developing this political theory into what it is now. Ancient Greece served as a foundation for it, developing the ideas of a government split into three branches. The three branches of government developed a new sense of representative democracy, which carried into the United States government. Aristotle and Cicero also developed civic virtue, and that the people own it to their communities to work together. These ideals, although similar to natural rights philosophy, would differ in this regard, in that natural rights would instead argue that it is the government that owns the people their rights, not the people that own the community their service.
Unlike classical republicanism, natural rights philosophy was developed during the creation of the United States, being developed during the Enlightenment. Natural rights are fundamental human entitlements inherent to all individuals, not granted by power or authority. Individuals such as Rousseau, Locke, and Hobbes developed all coherent concepts such as the social contract, which was an agreement between the country and the individuals, in which the individuals would live under certain rules for the good of the community. These ideas challenge traditional monarchical and aristocratic systems in the United States, advocating for a government that protects natural rights and serves the people.
Both political philosophies share a common emphasis on the importance of civic virtue and the common good. However, natural rights focuses more on individualism, unlike classical republicanism, which is more centered towards the common good. This difference, although small, would result in slightly different views on how the United States government should act in relation to the lives of its citizens. For example, under natural rights philosophy, the government would serve the citizens by legally protecting their freedom of speech, assembly, and unions, whereas classical republicans would argue that the government should serve their citizens by providing public services such as education, infrastructure, welfare, and free buses. These disagreements would continue to shape American politics, even influencing the recent November 4th elections.
Education was a shared philosophy between classical republicanism and natural rights. In classical republicanism, education was thought of as a way of civic virtue to cultivate citizens who emphasize the common good over their private interests, through an education centered on history and literature. Classical republicanists believed that a republic cannot stand without well-educated citizens. In contrast, natural rights philosophers believed education is an inherent entitlement for all individuals, rather than a privilege granted by the government. Both of these philosophies believed education is crucial for the survival of a self-governing society.
Both classical republicanism and natural rights philosophy played a large part in the development of the United States political system. Although both of these political ideologies were driving forces behind influential pieces of legislation, Ultimately, the influence of natural rights philosophy would outweigh the influence of classical republicanism due to an overall shift of focus to individual rights. This focus is being tested in the modern day, however, as seen in the recent New York mayoral election where Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani was elected as mayor, running on classical Republican views of lowered rent costs, city-owned grocery stores, and free busing.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Good job. All right, so then we're just gonna go through some follow-up questions. So starting off, and you kind of led into these things, but if you could give us a little bit more around these modern examples that demonstrate the relationship between or the tension between. You might hit on both, or you could pick one as far as natural rights and classical republicanism. So a modern example demonstrating the relationship or a tension.
A modern example could be the New York mayoral election between Zohran Mamdani and Andrew Cuomo. So Zohran Mamdani was more of a classical republicanist versus Andrew Cuomo was more of a natural rights philosophist. And so these two differences, although Mamdani didn't end up winning, that shows a modern difference between the two social groups.
And specific policies that were different were Zohran Mamdani specifically had the policies of free busing, free childcare, and city-owned grocery stores, along with taxes to the wealthy, which natural rights philosophers would likely argue that the increased taxes for those services could be considered as, restricting the right of property of the wealthy, even while classical republicanists could argue that it is their the wealthy's civic duty to provide that funding for public services.
And usually the people do not go with classical republicanism due to the more focus on the central government. So they would go for natural rights philosophy more, so because everyone wants to have individual rights.
And an example of modern day them collaborating would be education. For example, the program We the People. It's very focused on civic education, which both of these ideologies valued highly so that people could be educated enough to elect the right people and run the government effectively.
And without these examples of civic education, things like January 6th of 2020 would happen more. So people that are less civically educated on the government would be prone to repeat mistakes like that and have like a more deeper understanding in the United States government.
All right, you mentioned civic virtues. So you can think about this question two ways. What civic virtues, if any, are important for young people today, or what do you think makes a good citizen?
I think like what makes a good citizen and like civic virtue that we need to know are just like the democratic values and just like simple stuff that everyone should know that aims towards a good government and understand how the government works so we can prevent things like January 6th from happening.
I also think the development of separated beliefs from the parents to the children. So I believe that the children should have a different belief than their parents because, you want them to have their own beliefs. You want them to learn in school earlier and be able to have that idea in their head so that when they vote, they're not just going based off of someone else's opinion. They're well educated on who they're picking.
I also agree with Allison. I feel like we should be like the parents and the children, they should have their own separate opinion. I do get that parents like influence a lot of the kids' opinions, but I feel like we should all be free to our own opinion. And like we should just like be just different thoughts about everything so then that way like because I feel like a lot of people that have their opinions are based on their parents and they don't really know much and it's just what their parents go off of, which could be a lie. But I just think we need to be well informed.
We've been talking a lot about classical republicanism and civic virtue, so let's switch over to natural rights philosophy here. And you mentioned January 6th on a couple of occasions, so if I could just play devil's advocate for a little bit, couldn't you argue that those who participated in January 6th felt that they had a right to revolution that's consistent with natural rights philosophy?
Yes, they would argue that they have a right to revolution, as that's a very American ideal. I mean, we were founded under a revolution, and however, a lot of it is founded on untrue and not backed up ideas. So, increase in education, specifically civic education, could still prevent stuff like that happening.
And I also believe that civic education should be a more government, like a national government thing, so that everyone in each state is learning the same thing about the government, so everyone has the same idea of how they should act as a citizen and how the United States government will work.
So if you're saying that they didn't have a rights revolution, then what is, in the natural rights philosophy sense, when do people have a right to rebel?
I believe that people have the right to rebel when they were being they're being treated unfairly, and I feel like in that example they are not being treated very unfairly, and they're just going what the president or the ex-president told them to do.
Yep. Any other questions?
So, I was kind of, did you have another?
I mean, I can if you let me
Go
talk.
ahead.
So let's talk about social media here. So does social media do more to promote or undermine civic virtue today?
I definitely feel like social media would do more to promote because of the campaigns that are going on between presidents. You wouldn't see that back then because we didn't have the type of electronics that we do have now. And I think that is a very big way to promote civic virtue, because these young kids, as young as kids in 3rd grade, are seeing these presidents go back to back, and then seeing people's opinions on them and seeing what could be right or wrong. But I also feel like in a way it could be bad because some people could be giving their pure opinions, per se, instead of what is the true facts.
I agree with Allison. I feel like social media is a good way. I feel like we definitely get to see everything, and we get to see a two-party perspective. We get to see one perspective, and we get to see another, so we really form our ideas based on that. But I also feel like it's a good way to cultivate what's actually going on within our society and our government today. Like, for example, the government shutdown. I didn't know until I opened TikTok and I saw that the government shut down. And I was like, oh my goodness, and I did my research and I found out more. So I definitely feel like it's a good way.
Even, and that was
your time.
All right, thank you. So, because we're kind of just working through this, we're just going to give you some, star and a wish type feedback from each of us, just to kind of move things forward. And my understanding is Coldwater's been a part of this in the past, but I've been working through this since 2009 and haven't had a chance to work with you, so just kind of explaining how it will work, and when you have your other judges come through, they'll offer some feedback. Did anyone want to start? I'll go ahead, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay, great. So just one of the things I appreciated in probing for more information, you were full of that information. So, and you had some very specific examples, and then building on that and connecting it back to the tenets of the main unit overall question. So I appreciated that and what that looked like. And then, so where that was a positive, so then maybe one thing is maybe work at how to build that in more efficiently. And that's hard to say because you need a preponderance of evidence to follow that up, but how might you do that more efficiently so that that particular question, as I asked it as a follow-up, might have taken a large chunk of that follow-up question time. But I thought that was great. And then one thing that came up also that I was thinking of too is that continue to use those transition piece. I agree with, or if not, say, something along the lines of, so where my colleague says this, I'm thinking in this respect as well, because we want to hear disagreement as well and how that builds forward. And there's no problem in that, in addressing that and then bringing that out really to the next question. Great job.
I'll go next. I really liked how you responded within your group to each other and how you kind of piggybacked on somebody else's answer. And I agree with Mark. It was you presented some really good examples. And when I asked you about civic virtues, I'm very hopeful to hear that there's young people that are saying I need to have my own identity. I might not necessarily agree with the way my parents have voted in the past. In thinking ahead, when you talk about civic virtue, you might also think about how would that look if you were engaged in the public, voting, public service, and adding on something with that. But nice job.
Right. I've only got a couple minutes here, so I'm gonna go quick, but you guys did a really, really good job. So, Evan, I really appreciated when you actually dug deeper and explained the issues. You knew the details of that, and you applied that to classical Republican themes and natural rights philosophy. So I thought you did a really good job of taking that general theme and digging deeper and making those connections. So that was really good. And Liz, I love the reference to, you know, with regard to the question about social media, and you personalize it. You said, this is, hey, I learned about this, I utilize social media in this way. And so the more you can personalize it and make it real to you, that shows you're really applying it in your own lives. So that's really cool. With regard to the right to revolution, you know, Thomas Jefferson, right? A long train of abuses and usurpations, right? So he said, you know, it's not just one thing, it's just two things. It's gotta be several things, and not just bad things, it's like abuses. So since you mentioned January 6th on several occasions, you know, 62 court cases, right? 61 of them went against them, right? So it's not like they did not avail themselves of the process. So that's where you can apply natural rights philosophy. Just go back to what it means from what John Locke said, Thomas Jefferson applied it, and then apply it here as well. So, but I thought, again, you addressed that really well. I was trying to see kind of how you respond to it in that way, but I thought you guys handled that really well. And then, yeah, just look for opportunities to disagree as well, because that shows that you are at least seeing the other side of the issue too. But good job. You guys do the short straw too, for the go first. That's always the hardest
Yeah.
thing. So good work.
Yeah. Well, good job again.